Welcome to the Changing Earth podcast with Sarah F. Hathaway, blending survival, fiction, and fact to bring you entertaining education that'll help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sarah F. Hathaway.
Hello and welcome to the Changing Earth podcast. Last week, Vince and Erica left the camp with their kids to go get some one-on-one time. And today we get to hear what happened to Vince. How did he survive with Dex, and what was his story? What's his backdrop? And then James Talmadge Stevens, or Dr. Prepper, is back to talk to us about if you were in an evacuation scenario, what would you need to have ready to go, and how would you approach that situation? So it's a great conversation with him, and I can't wait to get started. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and hear the day after disaster story. Day after disaster, chapter 22. Let's see, where do I begin, said Vince. I had talked with you on the phone when you dropped Dex and Ripper off of your mom's. Not long after that, I got off work early because we wrapped up the job that we had been working on. Remember, we had been landscaping that guy's house with the Japanese tea gardens? So I picked up Dexter from your mom's house. Your mom and I chatted. She was working on fencing that day, and I helped her a little with pulling some barbed wire. Afterwards, we went back home. It was a nice day, not too hot. Remember, we had been doing all that watering, trying to keep our grass green? It was so long that I decided to go and mow it while Dex played in the yard. He and Ripper were running amok, and then all of a sudden, it sounded like a train was coming. The noise was so loud, I heard it over the noise of the mower. I turned it off immediately, wondering what the heck was happening. Then it began shaking like I'd never felt before. You could see the ground rippling like a wave, and it shook violently. Dexter was over by the shed with Ripper, and it was like we froze in time. The earth just kept rippling, wave after wave. Then in a blink of an eye, the whole town, as well as our house, sank into the ground. It was all the old mining tunnels. They gave way to the movement, and everything was devoured. Once all the buildings fell in, fires exploded from everywhere. Most of the propane tanks and gas lines blew, and it felt like a war zone. I had fallen into the ground with the house, but Dexter was still up on the ground. He was next to that little crappy metal shed. It still stood immune to the shaking. I was knocked out when I fell in and woke up to Dexter's frantic yelling and Ripper's wet tongue. Ripper had run down into the hole to find me. Well, I was pretty shocked and beaten up by the fall, but I slowly climbed my way out of the hole with Ripper's help. As if he knew the two were talking about his heroic deed, Ripper ran up and danced around the two of them. He licked Erica as she petted him. That's because he's a good dog, aren't you? Erica praised the animal. That day I thanked the Lord many times that you talked me into getting that dog. It was horrible, Erica. Everywhere you could hear the screams of dying people and the noise of explosions. I was in complete panic. The first thing I did was grab Dexter. I held him close as I ran around frantically trying to find and help anyone who survived. But I had no idea what to do, and the screams began to fade. Honestly, I was scared to move. You had no idea what would fall into the ground or explode next. In the end, I found only 4 survivors, and we rescued one man from under his house, but he died soon after. It all seemed like a blur now, a bad nightmare I can't wake up from. The devastation was so complete. The fires burned and spread. Dex and I, along with some other survivors, we didn't know them before the quake, emptied that little shed and stayed there for a few nights until it was obvious that no rescue was coming. We salvaged some rope from the wreckage and slowly began sifting through the rubble for anything of use, but especially for food. I made Dex stay in the shed because I had never seen so many dead bodies, Erica, and I hope I never do again. That is an image that you can never erase. But there was nothing we could do for them, so we just left them there. It wasn't too long before the stink of the rotting bodies was unbearable and the lack of water was becoming a real problem. We needed to get out of there, away from the death and near a good source of water. Then the second quake hit, and even more ground was being eaten by the gigantic sinkhole. That was the last straw. I had to get Dex someplace safe. We gathered what goods we could carry and began the long hike towards the lake. Along the way, we ran into a handful of people that had come to the same conclusion. The world was different then. Smoke was everywhere, and it seemed like everything was in some state of burning. We did the best we could to pick our way along the small trails down to the lake. I thought about you constantly, wondering what happened in Sacramento, but deep down, I knew you were still alive. Anyway, the closer we got to the lake, we realized the dam had broken and it was a river again. All I could think about was you down there and all that water coming your way. But I had to stay positive for Dexter. He had no idea about the implications of the dam breaking, and I wasn't about to tell him. We found some other people from Greenwood that had survived as well, and Big John Green was there. I was feeling much better then. If anyone would know how to survive in this mess, it was him. We decided we would camp with him until I could find you. He looked very unsure that you had survived and urged me to consider the possibility that you had not. But I would have none of it. I knew you were alive. I could just feel it. So we set up camp there and started putting together supplies for the group. That camp by the river is like one giant mud pit, but at least there's water there. We made contact with the cool camp, but with resources on such short supply, we decided to keep the group separated. Big John and I set up snares. Some of them were so cool, I thought of you all the time because I knew you would have loved making them with us. Anyway, we also had some contact with that crazy Auburn group and decided we should set up some guards to watch out for looters coming from that direction. I also made a trip over to Lotus to look for your mom. She's doing fine. Well, as fine as anyone is doing right now. You know her, the little Mighty Mouse. She decided to stay in Lotus with her neighbors, Bob and Kathy, because there are a bunch of survivors gathering there, and that camp is very well supplied. She begged me to stay with Dexter and Ripper, but I wanted to be close to the river because I knew eventually you'd be coming that way. And you did! Thank God you finally did. Brett is down there with her. We saw him in Georgetown initially, but he wanted to go find your mom and set off that way immediately. She'll be all right with Brett, so don't worry. That's about it. I've just been surviving, watching out for Dex, and digging the splinters out of my butt that I accumulated pining away for you. He smiled big as he cracked a joke to lighten things up. Oh, God, I love you. Vince wrapped her up in a big hug as they stared out into the sunset that was fast approaching. Holy crap, babe. We spent all day out here. And where are Dex and Star? Erica said, surprised that time had slipped away so quickly. They're right over there with Ripper, munching on some of that meat we brought. I can't tell you enough how glad I am you talked me into getting that dog. Since you were gone, he totally attached to Dex, and he's been like his guardian angel, Vince said, staring off at the kids. Dex, Star, come on. Let's start packing up, Erica declared. All right, so it's a nice calm day for Erica and Vince sitting in the sunshine, enjoying the conversation, letting the kids play in the grass. You know, it's not very often that these characters have that time and space to do that, so we'll have to see how things get rolling next chapter, because you know it's not going to stay calm for long. But today I have with us Mr. James Talmadge Stevens, or Dr. Prepper. Now, he grew up in post-World War II ex-urban lifestyle that included living by self-reliance principles. His family lived the preparedness lifestyle long before it was considered an attribute. On the farm of his maternal grandfather, he lived pretty much off the land. They played on haystacks and inside the barns. They raised chickens, pigs, cows, horses, and raised crops they could preserve and store. They also raise family-sized crops of corn, sugarcane, peas, beets, carrots, squash, onions, cucumbers, and hot peppers. And don't forget the okra and eggplant. Everything went into a bottle. He actually thought food grew in bottles in the dark of the basement until he was 7 to 8 years old. It was in the late summer after his 8th birthday that he found out how all those fruits and veggies got into those bottles in the basement storeroom. That was the summer his mother and grandmother determined he was old enough to learn how to tend the garden, pick the vegetables, and participate in the canning, bottling, and pickling, and hauling the jars to the basement. After several years, his family moved to a larger house on less land farther out of the city. A yard garden, in-home food production, and food preservation continued to be part of his life until his college days. In January of 1974, he developed Making the Best of the Basics Family Preparedness Handbook as a post-college project. Now that book is in the 11th edition of Making the Best of the Basics and has been published for this generation. He has come to the conclusion that it doesn't matter what causes the need. If you're prepared, you do not need to fear. James's book is an excellent resource, and I cannot stress this enough. He goes through all the different types of disasters, whether that be a personal disaster, a natural disaster, or a man-made disaster. He talks about each one of these and how you need to be ready to handle any one of them. Because it doesn't just have to be a catastrophic incident that brings hardship to your life, and you can be a little bit ready for it. Great book, internet resources, referrals, sheets for you to fill out, charts. Great resource to have on hand. I highly suggest you go out and pick up his book. And I don't know if it's still going, but I know that Gay Levy over at Backdoor Survival has been offering a discounted rate on that book. So you might want to go check that out as well. Let's go ahead and welcome James to the show. Thanks very much for being here with me today.
Always a delight. Always a delight.
I absolutely enjoyed immensely our last conversation, so I'm excited to get going with this one. So in this chapter, Vince tells Erica his story of survival. Vince was unprepared both emotionally and physically for such an event to take place. So, James, you write a lot about being prepared for evacuations and whatnot in your book. What can people do to prepare for an evacuation scenario?
Well, the whole purpose of I call it evac, and the purpose of it was emergency preparedness aware kit or away kit, whatever you want to call it, the EPAC. This was in my book many years ago, back before 1999. It's my emergency preparedness action kit. It's what I call the EPAC, and it is a bag. And I say really, one of the I put these little clips up and think, and on this particular product or action item, I said, you can't prepare for everything. However, for that which you do prepare for, you should prepare superbly well. If you're going to do it right. My dad used to say, Jimmy, I want you to do this right. I said, Dad, I'm doing the best I can. He said, you didn't get it, son. I want you to do it now. I said, I'm working on it. He said, well, the essence of what I'm trying to tell you is I want you to do it right now. And that was his attitude my whole life. And he owned a construction company, and when I'd work for him, he was always making sure that everything, he said, you're like Caesar's wife. You must be totally virtuous in front of these people. You have to work. You cannot take a break. When you take a break at 15 minutes, you stop on time, you start on time, you be the example. They'll laugh at you at first, and they'll say, you're afraid of your dad. He said, they should be also.
Right.
But the whole point was that it takes discipline. And so that is really what bugging out, I guess you'd call it, for lack of a better term. Bugging out is probably my last choice of anything because that means I would leave the most valuable thing that I've ever paid for. Not my wife is my most valuable, and my kids are well above that too. But the most expensive thing I ever bought is my home. I've spent years paying for it.
Right.
And we did get it paid off. And the last thing I'm going to do is leave it for the hordes to come in and to take over my my stuff, my preps, my food, whatever. If I can live there, knowing what I know, that remember there are three paradigms. I think I mentioned them before. 3 paradigms for your life. One is that you're going to bloom where you're planted. That you've got a place. It's all you've got, or if it's what you got, you fix it up so that it works best for you. Secondly, you want to have an in-home food storage pantry, or what we call a convenience store in your home, where all the stuff that you need to survive, to be able to live fortuitously, is at your beck and call, under your control whenever you want it. And the third thing that you want to be able to do, again, this is one of those preparedness rules of the 3. The third part of the rule is that you can camp out within the walls of your home. So see, why would you want to leave a situation like that? And that,
right.
So you ask me, what can people do to prepare? One, you go back to spirituality. What is the purpose of leaving? Why would you leave? And then the next question is, where are you going to go?
Right.
How are you going to get there? And what will you do when you get there? Those are questions you have to ask yourself. Those are hard questions. And for most of them, I mean, my last choice is to leave. And it would take, the only thing that would, I planned it this well. One, I live well above any water. I'm several hundred feet and way up along the side of a hill. The water would have to rise somewhere around 250 feet for it to get up to my porch, across a valley that's several miles wide. That's a lot of water. I would see Noah coming by in a boat.
Right?
Before I would need to move, because the trees that are below us would be underwater.
Right.
You know, they'd be wet in the water by the time it even got close to where to the bottom of my driveway. And it's an 11% grade up my driveway. I huff and puff, even in good condition. I huff and puff. I think get the top of 1,000 feet at 11%. That's a nice rise. The car struggles coming up there.
Right. Yeah, our driveway is like the same way. It's a big grade.
Yeah, it's a very steep grade. So anyway, given all that, I'm not going to leave here, and I'm on several acres. Can I defend it? That's the last thing I'm going to worry about. We live out in the country. We live in a small town of about 400 people, 120 families or something like that. And we're way out. There's one road in, the same road goes out. And it goes each way goes out through hills. So we could, if we had to, we could defend it. Who cares? I don't think that's going to happen. By the time the zombies get to us, they're going to have to go through a lot of very expensive subdivisions.
Yeah, right.
A lot, and it's 25 miles to town. So I'm not really worried too much. There are people people say, you need to be 500 miles, which is a full tank of gas in any vehicle from town. So people with you. They must not have seen Mad Max.
Yeah, right?
But we cannot imagine. We cannot imagine how bad it's going to be. There is probably nothing we've seen that can imitate the meanness of man, how evil people can be. We're already seeing it in government. We're seeing the threats that are coming from organizations already that are supposed to be defending us, who are threatening to attack us and have the right to do so. I mean, come on, get out of my. So where am I going to go? I have to determine, before I make that decision, I have to predetermine what my limits are that would make me leave. In other words, what's the threshold for making the decision to leave?
Right.
There are a lot of we can spend hours talking about all the things to consider. The creek rising or earthquakes, the natural disasters, whether they be weather related or geologically related. Those things all.
Yeah, we're in a wildfire area, so there's been a couple times this summer even that I've had to back up my computer and think, all right, we might have to leave.
Well, I live in a forest, and it's a pine forest, as it were, but I just happen to live next door to the fire department.
Oh, nice.
On purpose. I bought this property behind the fire. It's actually, part of my property looks right into the city hall, and next door to me is the fire department. They're out of sight. I don't see them. I can hear them when they leave outside the house. Inside the house, I don't hear them. But I did the best I could. There's a community here. Is it my community? Probably not. They're artists. They're very artsy-fartsy. They think it's more important to make their own paper for print for painting their pictures and making crucifixes. That's what they're all about. Me, I'm in a whole other world of practicality. So what am I going to do to prepare? I'm going to determine what my parameters are for not leaving, and then I'm going to have a threshold at which I will leave, and then I have to decide where I'm going to go. Well, under certain conditions, I may not be able to get out of town. So I have to make my threshold at some point below that possibility. So
right.
It takes planning. You don't just grab your 3-day kit and run. I've had police come. I've had the local, we call it constabulary, come up with the lights flashing at 10 o'clock at night. Mr. Stevens, you need to leave town. They know everybody by name here. They wave at us as we go down the street. But he said, you need to leave town. There's a reservoir up above us here, and the dam, it's been raining for days. It looks like the earthen dam could break around it, and it could flood this area. I said, how big is it? He said, it's about an acre. I said, how deep is it? He said, about 3 feet. I said, that's 3 acre feet. And what's the elevation? He says, it's 660. I said, I live at 690. It's got to go down the hill, a mile away. It's got to go down the hill. It's just going to be like pouring out a 55-gallon drum of water virtually. It's got to go down the hill, and it's got to back up the creek that is 75, 85 feet below me and fill up the whole valley before I have to worry about it. Why do I leave? Because,
right.
Oh, I didn't think about that. You see?
Yeah, so you have to be rational.
You have to understand the threat. You have to think about it in advance, and it would take, literally, as I said, Noah would have to come by in his ark before I would be concerned.
Right.
So to think about 3 acre feet of water a mile away, it was right above me. It would dissipate before it got down to, So I just said, forget it. And he said, well, you really ought to reconsider. We got special hotel rates for those who want to leave. I said, I'm Dr. Pepper.
I'm not going anywhere.
Why would I leave? So I gave him a copy of my book. He said, oh. So anyway, what would I do to? It's a complete scenario. It takes a lot of thinking. It takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of consideration, and you have to have a go-no-go point. And then when you get there, it's time to move. You have to be ready for it. So that's my answer. It's pretty convoluted, pretty complicated. But you see, I'm not selling bags. I'm not selling equipment. I'm not selling people on. No wonder people don't want to be a prepper. They got to have a 3-day. Yeah, they got to have a 6-month supply of food. They've got a can. They've got to be able to start a fire with a bow.
Right.
Who wants to be a prepper?
Yeah, who wants to do all that and leave the technology behind?
I'm sorry. Okay.
That's true.
You have to have a sense of humor if you're going to be a prepper.
Yep.
So anyway, EPAC. So one of the basics. Why would you have an EPAC? Well, because it makes sense. My wife and I actually look forward to the lights going out because she'll come to me and say, "Can we get into our 3-day kit now?" Because I've gone out and I bought Danish cookies. I've got some nice little Jewish delicacies. I have some fake fish eggs. What do they call it? Caviar. I've got some great crackers, things that I wouldn't keep around normally, but here in my kit. Why? Because when I have to leave, it's going to be an event. I want it to be a fun event. Yeah, I have freeze-dried food packed in there. I have MREs. I hate them. Somebody else said that they would get a year's supply of MREs. Mr. Stevens, how many MREs would you have to have for a year? I said, about a dozen. Because by the time you're a dozen, you're through with that food supply.
Right.
It's so bad. Who wants more? So, yeah, people tell me that I could live off of, I've had people tell me I could live off of, what was it, oh golly, Twinkies. One guy told me, said, well, if you can freeze them, if you can refrigerate them, if you can freeze dry them, if you can dehydrate them, if you can store them every way that possibly can, you might make it. But it's going to, be fatigued with those puppies pretty soon. And besides, you'll never die.
Yeah, you look like a Twinkie by the time you're done.
So anyway, you have to have a bit of a sense of humor about it. You have to realize that it's only critical if you're completely bollocks by it. Don't believe everything. I always say, don't believe a thing I say. Try it for yourself.
Right.
If I tell you I like this, good. That's what I like. I'm weird. You don't have to be weird like me. Be weird like you are, and learn to appreciate your substantial difference in who you are and what I am. Now, I can eat the finest food. I've eaten at the finest gourmet restaurants in Paris, but I enjoy a good hamburger, and I cook myself just as much. It's time and place. I make my own popcorn. I love going to the movie. I haven't been to the movie in 18 years. Why? Don't need them. You got TV if I want it. But I love just spending my time enjoying my family and reading and gaining knowledge. And I read a lot of blogs. I don't know why I do it, and I just kind of go, oh my goodness! Don't take other people's word for your salvation. You are responsible, and you alone. You'll be judged for yourself, by yourself, and for what you do for yourself. So when I tell people, remember, what are the basics included in the kit? Go back to number one. What's your limits? Where are you going? What are you going to take with you? What are you going to do when you get there? If you don't know those, how do you pack a kit?
Right.
Well, I'm going to take the best I can get. I'm going to have the best knife, the best gun, the best bullets. I'm going to have why? Because my life will depend on it. Right. So I'm going to have some freeze-dried food. I'm going to have some LRPs, some MREs, and some other kinds of product. And you can go to the store today and buy. There's one other thing about food. All these things. Remember, your life is in that kit. Keep that kit where you live. If you live in air-conditioned comfort, make sure your kit resides in air-conditioned comfort. Don't put it in the boot of your car and drive around with it, leave it in the garage overnight or all day long over the weekend, because it'll cook that food and ruin it. But
right.
You can go to the store today and you can buy tuna fish for 2.5 to 4 ounces. Buy carnation. You can buy roast beef. You can buy virtually anything. And it's retorted. That means it's cooked. It's still wet packed like an MRE, but they don't have the military requirements to it. It's just good food. You can buy those, and they're a quarter-inch thick, and you can buy rashers of bacon already sealed in Mylar, and you can eat them. They're good for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Well, my goodness, the whole point of this is to be able, when you're under stress, you're going to want calories, you want to want quality of food, and you want to enjoy having a moment to sit down and think, I'm going to have me some caviar. Just going to enjoy this moment. And
right.
So my wife was, when the lights go out, she said, can we get out here and sit out? Because my thing is, when the poop hits the propeller, I'm going to sit down and have a picnic.
Yes.
And people say, well, that's not nice. It's not your life. It's mine. It's nice for me, and it's what I want to do. You do what you darn well please. And I think that's where we have to quit worrying about what Susie Q says you should do in an emergency. What would you do? What would you like to do if it's an emergency? So, the essentials are whatever's needed for you. Again, go back to triage. You would ask me, what kind of medical stuff would you have to have? What do you need? Obviously, the first medical thing is my heart pills. If I get excited, my heart rate goes up. Can you imagine that? So anyway, I'd be under a lot of stress if I had to start walking down the street with a 40-pound pack.
Yeah, right.
It's going to do, if you're not prepared for that, you could die of a heart attack by the time you got 200 yards down the street. So
right.
There is no simple answer to any of this because it's all integrated. So the medical essentials, you take with you the medical essentials you need most, which would be your medications if necessary. You want some pain pills. You want things that you normally use. If you take ibuprofen, then have some ibuprofen.
Right.
Whatever.
Use hydrogen peroxide, have some of that.
I saw that. And today you can buy it in little Mylar sleeves. You can buy it in very small bottles. You can buy it cheap. Buy it now and keep it sealed in a cool place. and and toilet paper. Get a lot of toilet paper because it's weight in gold, literally worth its weight in gold when there is, and remember, there are no Sears catalogs anymore.
That's true. That's true.
That's been wiped, no pun intended, but that's been wiped out now. So anyway,
I have a box of a file of bills. I think that would do in place of the Sears catalogs.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing is, be prepared to continue to. The whole preparedness is pretty simple. You're going to do more of what you've always done. You're just going to get more of it, so you can do it for longer. Yeah. That's all. I mean, it's you can make it as complicated as you want. You can make up all these rules. You can make up all these lists. But the whole point is just be rational. If you like Lazula's peas, buy them when they're on sale. Just wait till they go on sale. Buy all you want. Or it doesn't matter. Food keeps going up all the time. So obviously, if you buy it now, it's a bargain tomorrow.
Right.
And just learn. Remember, learn how to produce it by getting possession of it. That's producing it. Not everybody can have a garden. It's just not going to happen. If you're if you live in an apartment, where are you going to have a garden? Well, I'll go out in the woods. I'll go out to my, well, wherever you go, a garden is very visible. What's going to disappear first? Visible food.
Yep.
So maybe it's better just to have some food you're used to eating. And most of us don't eat fresh food. I will tell you, except for the stuff that we grow and some of the stuff that I buy, I don't eat a lot of fresh food. I mostly food that comes out of a can or out of a bag because it's convenient for me. I work long hours, work all day. We live way out in the woods. Going to the grocery store every day is not we don't go to the grocery store once a week. And when we do, it's to pick up milk and maybe a loaf of French bread because they can make it better than I can.
Right.
And cheaper, a whole lot cheaper. Or we buy tortillas because I don't like making tortillas. That's woman's job. I do the cooking myself.
It sucks even for the women, though, because you never get to enjoy the time with your family because you're standing there making the darn tortillas. That's just,
I can buy them cheap. By the way, I can freeze them, or I can freeze dry them, or I can dehydrate them. They don't rehydrate very well because they get gooey, but they make chips. So if you sprinkle a little, I take some sea salt and sprinkle on it, and then dry them, and so it sticks to it, and I put them in the dryer, and then I put them in a sack, and I seal them in a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber and a moisture desiccant, and pack it, and they're good for, I had some out there already for 2-3 years, and they're fine. We open them when we need them. And you can sit and eat them as a snack because they're crispy. And this is San Antonio. You get some really good tortillas here.
Yeah, we get it okay up here. We're in Northern California, so, we're a little bit displaced off of it, but it's not bad. It's not bad.
So an e-bag, really, you include in it the stuff that's critical to your self-preservation. Pretty simple rule. And if you need a lot of food, then put a lot of food in there. The more dry food, the better. Dry food's kind of bulky. I go ahead when I freeze dry food, and I freeze dried everything from sliced bananas, sliced tomatoes, eggplant. Oh, I cook eggplant like you won't. I take eggplant, I slice it, skin on and everything. I dip it in some buttermilk, and then I dip it into cornstarch. I don't use flour. I don't like flour. Corn. And it's such a light, delicate, like the Chinese do. They have a very light, so I go ahead and fry it in with some coconut oil and put sea salt on it as I, grind sea salt on it. And it is so delicious. It is so good. I will go through a whole eggplant by myself while I'm getting them ready.
And nice.
My wife, and it's so tasty. It's so good. It's so simple and so delicious. It's just using as little seasoning as possible. Put a little pepper if you like it. Anything else you like. But and you can dip it, or you can just put butter on it. It is so great.
Yum. I'm an eggplant lover, too. I make a killer eggplant parmesan with, I do a chicken layer in there, too, so that the chicken absorbs all the eggplant juices and everything. Oh, so good. Yeah, definitely a fan. So I'm going to try that.
Yeah, and you can take your chicken, cook it virtually the same way, then you freeze dry it and put it in a bag, and anytime you want it, you just grab the bag, cut the top off of it, because you can reseal it, put another desiccant and another of the oxygen absorbers in it, and starts all over again.
Well, that's a great point, because I've tried now freezing eggplant, which doesn't work. It's horrible when you open it back up, unless you're going to just grind it and put it into a stock. Or I tried canning it, and it's the same way. When we opened it up, it was like gummy and just not very appetizing, you know.
Well, you make money with your book. Get yourself a freeze-dry machine, because it'll change your whole life. It is a missing link in food storage.
Yeah.
Because I've had I've been dehydrating since I was 6 years old. I mean, that's when my mother took me. I said, you're gonna have to watch this, keep the birds away. Then we figured out we could put a piece of gauze over it, and that helped. So, I mean, we learn as we go.
Right.
And so the question is, what do you include? What medical essentials you include in your bag? What do you need to stay alive? Am I going to put a surgical kit in it? No. Not only does it cost a lot, I was an Army medic, and I could do minor surgery. I just don't want to do that anymore.
I wouldn't know what to do with it, so that's why I say, like, why put it in there? I mean, I've watched the tutorials on it, and, I trained to be an EMT as well, and I learned that there's a big difference between learning and doing. And when the moment came down that I had to help somebody, I was very thankful that the fire department was right on top of it and I didn't have to do it. And I went, you know what? I am not an EMT. I do not want somebody's life in my hands. If I had to, I have the knowledge, if it was my family member, but I'm not going to go out and do that job.
So that begs the question, if in terms of medical essentials, whatever you need, there are lists in the book. If people buy my book, Making the Best of Basics, Family Preparedness Handbook, there's a whole section on things to do medical. I'm not going to go into those details. Really, everything is optional based on what you can afford, what you need, or how comfortable you feel. But medically speaking, if you take a pill, if you take a prescription, or if you use a palliative of any kind or whatever, nerve pill, or just or even coffee, get it in the bag. Whatever, that's what you want to have. Keep on doing what you've always done. That's
right.
The essence of a go bag or e-pack or whatever you want to call it. So the other thing is, people always ask, well, should I pack tools or food?
Right.
Which is more important to you? What's your situation? Everything is situational. It's up to you. If you don't know how to use a tool, don't bother.
That's true. That is true.
So, at least food you can figure out. But
right.
A tool, you may never. So why would you want to carry a bunch of mechanics tools if you don't know how to fix it? If you're not a mechanic, what's the point?
Yeah.
Don't waste effort. Don't waste money. Don't buy any secondary items until you bought all the first priority items. Once you bought those, then you can start guessing. And people who give you, it's the people who have no experience who will tell you, get some stuff to barter with. You want to buy secondary items to procure first priority items? Does that even make sense?
Yeah, it's so true.
So anyway, do you pack food or tools? Which will be more useful to you? If you have food, you can hire somebody to do the work for you by giving them food.
That's true. But then give them your food too.
Everybody eats. So
right.
Food will buy a lot of favors. A lot of kinds of favors, I may say. So anyway, that's the answer to that. It depends. It really depends on whether or not you're comfortable with the tools. But if you're an electrician and we have an EMP, what tools do you need?
Right. That's true. That's true.
So if a bomb flattens the whole city, you don't need a fire extinguisher anymore.
But you're going to be thankful for that food in that pack. That's for sure.
Right.
Yep.
Always look at worst case scenario and see, excellence in preparation is not particularly a skill. It's more of an attitude. What can I do when the poop hits the propeller? When it's over, what skills, what talents, what abilities, what can I lend to recuperating, to recouping, to rebuilding? That's what you need to know. And it's like in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. You want to have one eye left over
right.
with all over. That's really all that matters. So anyway, Yeah, it depends. So what, would you rather have food or tools? Depends on how handy you are.
Yeah. Are you going to be able to use those tools to get the food, or do you just need the food?
Or use the food to get the tools. Yeah.
Right? I really like that.
Okay.
I do. It's just so simple. When you lay it out that way, it's just like, why do we spend so much energy even overthinking half of the stuff that you can just be like, look, it's going to matter on what you need at the time to make it happen. How are you going to adapt and overcome when you're presented with the situation?
What is the situation? That's the bottom line. What is the shit rep, as they say. So anyway, everybody worries about, secrecy and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I've been doing this for 41 years. My name is in my book, my real name. My address is in my name. My business address is in my name's in the book. My address is in the book. My telephone number's in the book. My P.O. box number's in the book. I mean, nobody's ever called me. Nobody's ever, so much less come to see me. So it's really kind of interesting. And all these bright young people who are doing this now, well, I don't want anybody to know here where I'm living. I have a fake name. And would you buy food? You go on a site and they say, I've got food. They give a brand. They give you pricing. They tell you what you're going to get. And you go over, you say, oh, I'm going to get this. You go to order, and they don't have a name. They don't have an address. They don't have you don't know where they are.
Right.
You don't know how much, and you're supposed to send them your credit card for a bunch of money?
Yeah.
And you don't know who they are? Excuse me, did I miss something in training?
Yeah, I don't think so. It's not happening.
So what's wrong with this? Everybody thinks that, it's a matter of preparedness is about trust, trusting in your own judgment, trusting in the judgment of those with whom you associate, and the other people that you're going to have to deal with. You have to have a level of trust.
Right.
I'm not trusting somebody who won't tell me their name. They have no phone number. The only way I can communicate with them is an email.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? Excuse me. I'm not going to do that. And so they wonder why they're not successful. So anyway, that's my take on that. Probably people will say, "Oh, well, don't know what he's talking about." Excuse me. Been there, done that. Been doing this for 40-some years, and the more experience, the more open you are, the more people can have confidence in what you say because they know you're reachable.
Right. It's all about relationship building at that point. It's knowing that you're a trusted source so they can rely upon your experience instead of questioning it because they don't trust you.
So bottom line is preparedness is all about each of us as an individual. It's about us, our life, and our family. Preparedness is being able to go on in the future regardless of external conditions, no matter what happens.
Right.
So having that haven, having that home in which you have food, in your home convenience store, having the ability to camp out within the walls of your home, those are very critical capabilities and critical need for a family.
Right. Okay, one last easy question for you. Do you prefer the external or an internal frame pack for your backpack?
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding. Right? Doesn't matter? I don't know. Everybody's out there and they've got their own opinions on, the new internal ones, the external ones. I'm old school. What does it matter if you don't have either? What does it matter? You have to make it. If you have one, use it. The point is, it's another expensive item you have to buy. I've used both. In the military, we had one kind. In Boy Scouting, I had another. I was a Boy Scout master. And all of them were far too big for me to carry very comfortably. Today, I couldn't get along with them. But it really depends on a couple of things. One, where are you going? How long are you going to be gone? And how large is your body? And so basically, how long are you going to be gone? The number of days you have to provision for determines the size. And that's all done in liters, as I recall. You used to do it in gallons or whatever. But imagine carrying a lot of water. You don't. You carry a device that helps you process whatever water you find. Remember, water is like food. You have to be able to produce food. You have to be able to prepare food, and you have to be able to also preserve food. But for some other, as far as water goes, there's a very interesting
rule of three about that everybody needs to be aware of, and that is that you have to learn how to collect water. You have to learn how to treat the water. They use the word purify. That's way
Right.
above.
Yeah, the future. Purify.
Then you have to learn. You have to learn how to store it. Those are the rules of three for water. So
what's your favorite treatment method? Because I've done like the iodine. I thought the iodine was nasty. Yeah, I was like, oh, well, you can put some Gatorade powder in there, and it's not so bad then at that point. But also the Life Straw is, it's okay, like depending on how clean the water source is that you're drinking from. So what's your favorite there?
Well, all these companies kind of, whoever comes out with the latest technology and says that we have the best product, and it comes out with a new set of quote unquote standards or specifications, everybody else immediately goes and copies it because, well, he uses charcoal, I have charcoal, mine is just as good as his. And if somebody comes does a real end of life test, which means they test to see where it goes, how long it can be used before it dies or is no longer effective, everybody else does the same. This is the biggest Me Too industry, and it's the most volatile of all the products because water is so critical to our lives. So
right.
I use filtration. I use a multi-layered kind. I do my own because I know how to. It's what I've done over the years, and I'm very good with water. I live on a well, so I'm spoiled. And I have a reverse. I used reverse osmosis for a while. Then I realized my body was being depleted of minerals because your body has to have minerals, and normally water carries a lot of minerals. And if it doesn't get out of the water, it has to leach it from your bones or from an organ of your body. So that's
right.
But we do filter it with charcoal. We do filter it through some other product called zeolite. Because that traps virus and bacteria and things like that, and I do that, and then I have a filter to take the copper or copper colored iron and iron rust out of it.
Right.
So that's what I have to have. And when we moved into the house, you flush the commode and brown water would come out, and it took about 10 years to get the system cleaned out. And
yeah, we have the same problem with iron and sulfur in our water, so we got a really nice filter that does a self-flush on itself and takes all the iron and stuff out. And boy, you can tell the minute whenever we have like a power flicker, sometimes it'll trip that filter, and you can tell immediately when it's not working. Yeah. It's really bad. Yeah. So.
Well, we have a cistern somewhere around 4,000 gallons. On the hill, and we pump water to it through our shallow well, and then we can, and I can pump it. It's only 9 feet deep. It's never run dry, no matter how hot or how much of a drought we've been through, and been really lucky with that. And so the water will flow down at about 4 gallons per minute, just by gravity. It's not enough to take a really stinging shower, but you can get clean.
Right.
That's all. So basically, you ask about backpacks. It depends on, again, as I said, where you're going, how long you think it'll take you to get there, and what you have to take with you. And they're climbing packs, but you want to make sure the backpack fits your bone structure. Sometimes externally it's easier. They can gouge you sometimes, but also fitting a backpack to the length of your torso and around your waist. They make them for women. They make them for kids. There are all other kinds of load-bearing helps, you can get a backpack or a trampoline kind of, for the external pack, you can put a membrane on it.
Right. Yeah.
There are lots of things you can do. So to say, it's really what you like, it's really what you find, and fits your color scheme, and is the right size.
Is it accessorized properly?
That's right. Does it have the right logo on it? All those things are important. So I can't give you a definitive answer. I have an internal one.
Okay.
Because it works for me, and I've had it for years, and it's paid for. To go get an external one means I'd have to repack everything, and blah, 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 and then I wouldn't have, then I'd have to hang, I wouldn't have maybe enough pockets to put things, but I could hang them, and some of the clips might be gone, but I could find a way to drill the frame or make sure the frame had a place to put. I just don't like things banging around outside the pack when I'm moving.
Right.
It distracts me, and it telegraphs that I'm coming.
Yeah,
so
noisy.
Really, yeah. So when I'm hiking or tripping or spending the rest of my life on the road, it depends. I think personally I like the internal one. It works best for me because I have one. But a lot of people like the external frame. They're more expensive, and they're supposed to be the next step upward from internal, which is the old way of doing it, because you can get titanium and stuff like that in them. It just depends on what your price range is in, and who makes it. I mean, Jansport makes a good one. Kelty makes a good one. There's some real good ones out there. There are websites you can go to. You can just type in external frame, I think, backpack, and it'll bring up a whole plethora of people who sell the product. You can do the same for internal.
We got an old scouting one for my son down at the flea market. It was just an old Scouts pack, and it's external frame. It's all still in good shape. My mom's an upholsterer, so she could fix up whatever needed to be done. But we found it down there real cheap, so we were like, oh, what the heck? He's still growing, and we just need one for while he's a youth and things like that.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
There's
nothing wrong with not having the latest and greatest. What you want to have is serviceable. And the thing is, if you're going to be out away from the home, it's going to get dirty anyway.
Right.
But there's so many choices. It's like, which is better, dehydrated or freeze-dried? Depends. It depends on the application, how much time you have to mess with it, and how much money you have to spend. I love dehydrated, freeze-dried because it's fast. Sometimes it's not seasoned right. I have to go work on it. I can take the concomitant parts and put them together from dried stock and come up with a delightful meal myself, but it takes a lot more work. It takes some creativity, and it takes time. And time is one of the things we may not have. It doesn't burn up a lot of resources if it's already freeze-dried. Just boil some water, pour it in, let it sit for 5 minutes. If you make it up from the same recipes and dehydrated stuff, you've got a lot of reconstitution time. So it's all, I have to remember, life is situational.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and we're all in our own situations, so that it makes it a totally unique plan for each individual. And I really like that outlook. I wish
I could give you a definitive plan, which is better. Each one has its own aspects of good, and each one has its own disadvantages. You just have to work it out by trying it. A big guy might like to take a really large pack, but to put a 70-pound pack on you might not be a good thing.
Right.
It's tall as you come up to your shoulders from the ground.
Right.
So,
I'd be drowned by it. Yeah, that's my husband has the really big pack, and then I would have the son and a pack. So that'd be my load there.
So the situation always demands what to do, and I think it's a matter of going out and seeing the product, touching it. One thing about expos that's really nice that people should put in, if one comes near you, go to an expo. If you've never been to one, Sarah, you should go and see what they do, because you get to touch, taste, feel, discuss, and experience all the stuff that people are talking about. So
right.
if company A is there giving taste tests, you get to taste their product. You can go over to company B and taste theirs, see if it's any better. I mean, that's what you do. And you sit down and talk to somebody about the advantages of sprouting as opposed to canning or whatever, and how you can, and whether or not external pack or an internal pack is a better one for you. So, well, you get more of this and that, and you get more of that and this, and then you can start weighing out for you which has the economic advantage.
Right. Yeah, I've just found that with the external pack, it's a little bit bigger and easier for me to carry. The internal one seemed a little bit more comfortable, though. That's what I found was nice about that one. So.
We're more familiar with everything being inside, so it's so it doesn't give away what you're trying to achieve. The external ones are fine. They catch on a lot of stuff when you're walking through the woods. I mean, there's things you have to worry about. But
that's true.
Whatever. To each his own.
Yep.
And if you don't have either, then you get to make a choice. If you already own one, that's something you don't have to worry about. That decision has already been made unless you can afford to make another one and cure that. But most of us don't have we can't keep, can't buy. I don't like the color of my car. Oh, let's go buy another one.
No.
That's not the motivation most of us have.
Right.
Well, anyway, I like
Absolutely.
your questions. That we're all different, and we all need to be prepared. Nobody knows it all about preparedness. Nobody ever has, and nobody ever will.
I love
if
it.
you remember that, you can become more comfortable with the decisions you make. You'll make some wrong ones. You'll make some bad ones. You'll make some good ones, and you'll make some great ones. It's okay. We're human. There is forgiveness. And after this life, none of this stuff don't matter.
Right.
My dad always said, son, if you can think, if a year from now you can look at this and say, why did I worry about that? Why was that an issue at the time? He says, you're growing up and you're accepting life as it really is. Because most things, after you get over the emotion, and by the way, every decision is emotional. People say, well, that was an emotional decision. Absolutely. Every decision is based on emotion. Emotions which come from information, from knowledge. And by the way, knowledge is not power. Knowledge is not power. It is the key to power. And knowledge is merely an accumulation of information, and data. And we process it and we make decisions. We make good ones, we make bad ones. As we correct the bad ones, we become wise. We achieve wisdom. And they say, wow, that guy's really smart. Same thing as wise, because he makes better decisions. Some of those decisions we learn to make from bad experiences.
Right.
In the past. But then the whole point of it is, as it says in the Old Testament, the spiritual nature of decision-making is having understanding. You understand people. You understand why you do things. If people will come to an understanding of preparedness, they'll be so much wiser. Their knowledge can be applied much more effectively and economically, and they'll make better decisions and do better stuff if they have understanding. Understand why I've been telling you all along, it's situational.
Yeah.
Why are you doing it? What is the driver? What is your motivation? What is excellence in your decision? And remember, we're all so different that understanding us is more important than anything else. But it says in the Old Testament, with all you're getting, get understanding, because that wraps around wisdom. Now you have power. When you understand, you can now make powerful decisions that affect not only you, but affect others. And they can be positive or negative. But if you understand, you will, as you understand more and more, you'll make better and better decisions because you want to. That is the nature of wisdom and understanding.
Right. Well, thank you so much, James, for sharing your wisdom and understanding with us. Like I say, it's always such an honor to talk with you. It's just an enlightening experience because you do get kind of hung, slammed down in the doldrum of all the information that's being fed at you. And in the end, it's what makes sense for you. And I really like that outlook on things. So I want to thank you for your time. It's been a very rewarding experience.
There's one final two-line. I'm sorry, I stepped over
Okay,
the
go
line.
for it.
If it is to be, it is up to me. It's that simple.
Yes.
If it is to be, it is up to me. I've applied that so many times, and it gives me courage, it gives me a distinctive competence, and it helps me realize that I am responsible for me.
That's true. Such is my mission that I'm on right now. About sums it up in one sentence.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. I hope my rants have been reasonable.
No, like I say, it's always so enlightening. It's just so simplified and so basic. And it's like, why couldn't we just all think of it that way? It's just what makes sense for me. Though you can learn all the information, but what's going to work for you in the end. So thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely privileged for me to be with you. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for being here with me, James. It's just such an honor to have you on the show, being that you were putting this material together before it ever became a trend or a thing to do. So I really appreciate your input on this issue. I know you've been studying and researching this material for a long time, so we should all take note of what you have to say. So now let's go ahead and get into review time. It's time for review time. Got an opinion? I'd love to hear it. Go ahead and give me your 2 cents on Day After Disaster or the Changing Earth podcast. Head on over to Amazon or iTunes to give me your 2 cents. So, recording this show a little bit early like I do. I didn't have any iTunes review at the time, but I do have some great Amazon reviews on Day After Disaster to share with you today. So my first review that I'm going to share today is from Cynthia Ducharme. And any of you who know me on Facebook, you're going to recognize this name. So I'll let you do your homework and see if you can discover who this review is from. She gave me a 5-star review. And she says, this was a great read. Fast pace, a real page turner. Can't wait for the next one. My next review was, let me say first, thank you very much, Cynthia Ducharme, for leaving me such an outstanding review. I appreciate your input more than you know and respect and honor you more than you know. So my next review is from Mandy. She also gave me a 5-star review, and she says, this was a great read. It had my attention and kept me turning the pages. The well-developed storyline mixed with the strong survival knowledge of the writer made this a book I would highly recommend. From the beginning when disaster struck through the end, I was amazed at the continuous turns and changes to keep the storyline interesting and me guessing. Looking forward to the next one. Very cautious where it will take Erica and her family. So thank you very much, Mandy. There's a part of this book we haven't got to yet. And I kind of amazed myself when the plot weaved together. And then I went back and read the story and I was like, oh my goodness, did that just come out of me? Because I'm not a very big read between the lines kind of person. I kind of got to be smacked in the face with a concept. So I was afraid that my writing might be a little too blunt and I wouldn't be able to weave the plot enough. But man, I'm telling you, those writing demons take over and there you go. You got a great storyline. So the next review is one that I was really honored to get. It's from Bill Reese, and he is the owner of Instinct Survival. Great site on survival over there, so you go check out Bill. And he's currently reviewing my next book for me as well, and then we got a little surprise Christmas giveaway going on over there as well. So check out Instinct Survival. And Bill says, while book reviews have slowed down a bit, so that I may focus on some personal reading, I get requests every now and then to give opinions on new titles. I'm always happy to help out new authors as well as established ones. This time, Sarah F. Hathaway reached out to me to review her first in the Changing Earth series called Day After Disaster. I have nothing against women being the main character of a survival type book, but I will say that is something you do not find very often. It was a welcome change. It all starts with the main character, Erica, at her job, and then basically everything goes south. Mother Nature throws her a curveball, and it is literally the end of the world as we know it. While battling earthquakes and floods, among other things, Erica longs to get back to her husband and son, and the story adds many twists and turns as she attempts to make it to them. The characters are well built, and thankfully not all up front, meaning we learn more about Erica as we go along the story. We discover her identity with each test and trial she faces. As an example, and maybe a spoiler, we learn as she meets unsavory characters she knows martial arts. While this doesn't get her out of every situation, it does add to the benefit of her character and hint at her being a badass. With each person Erica meets, Hathaway has provided good background and developed the characters in the story form as opposed to labeling them. For instance, labeling a character as a former special forces operator reads the leader to a preconceived ideal and leaves little to the imagination. Except for one paragraph in the book, the story is very clean. I do not recall any foul language, and if there is any, it was not obtrusive or offensive, and it certainly did not deter the reader from the story. One more promotion for the book is the ending, not a spoiler. Reading a book in a series that does not lead to the next book makes it difficult to purchase a second one. Sarah Hathaway did not have this problem as she led us straight to the desired point of reading the second book. There is plenty of storyline left for more than just one book. My overall thoughts are I would like to see deeper skills being used in the second book. There were tactics and skills in Day After Disaster, but for my taste, I would like them expanded or for the author to go more in depth on some of them. All in all, I like the book. The story and the characters are built well and the action fits in line with my taste. In short, this is another one I can say, buy the book. Thanks so much, Bill. I so appreciate this review. It was just awesome to hear from a survival professional that it really hit the mark. A couple of points. Some of the reviewers, thought that I introduced skills when they were needed. So it was like convenient skills. And, they were always there. I just didn't feel a need to lay everything out right at the start. So I wanted the plot to develop. And I really like that you picked up on that and enjoyed that part of it instead of saying it was plot convenience, because I really don't think it was. I know who the character was before I wrote it. It's just that the reader didn't. So I really appreciate that opinion. And also, I really like the foul language. Of course, I published with a Christian publishing company. The original manuscript did have a swearing in it, but I had to remove that because I published with the Christian publisher. I also enjoyed the part that you said about not labeling people, because I did want to leave that open to imagination, and I didn't want to box it in. That's half the fun of reading a book versus watching a movie. It's what you make of it. It's who do you see the character as. So I really like that you picked up on that as well. I'm really excited to hear what you think of my next book, because I really, like I say, valued your opinion of the first one. So we'll see what Bill has to say there when we are in Season 2 of the Changing Earth podcast. In the meantime, we have one more episode left before Christmas, so that's pretty exciting with Christmas almost here. And, I hope you guys are all merry and staying safe while you're doing your holiday shopping, being alert, keeping your heads up, and staying smart. So until next time, remember, dream, survive, thrive.
Thank you for joining Sarah for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster at www.author.sarahfhathaway.com. If you love this podcast, please head over to iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.